Good evening, everybody. Today is February 29th, 2024. Happy leap year day or leap day. I'm not sure what you really call it, but we get an extra day this year. So I'm glad that I get to spend it with you and share some hopefully helpful information. So I wanted to start today with immediately diving into what's going on in the Georgia market, because then I want to dive into some more information that is definitely real estate based, but is also just life based. And unfortunately, a lot of us do not always want to think about the end or what could happen in bad scenarios. However, this is life. And we all know that we're not promised tomorrow. And there's been some situations that have happened in 2024 in my personal life, as well as in some of my clients' life, that have definitely made me reevaluate trusts and wills. And I just feel that is very important. I share these things with you so that you can make the best educated decisions for you and your family. So I honestly thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for joining me. It means the world to me when I see you guys jumping on. I love having your comments, your questions. This is literally why I'm here every Thursday. So if you have any questions throughout or later on, you know that you can always reach out to me. I am always here to be a resource. You can call me or you can reach out to me at ashley@myhaventeam.com. Would love to take this conversation offline if you need more information. So drop a comment, drop a question, whatever you need, definitely here for you. But let's get started. So going and taking a look at the market, I'm specifically taking a look at the market in Gwinnett County right now, because if we look at Georgia as a whole, it's going to give you a very mixed message, because Georgia as a whole, if you were to go into South Georgia, it is a much different market than you're going to get in the city of Atlanta or any of the suburbs surrounding the city compared to South Atlanta. So I'm going to give you Gwinnett County specifically. So we're looking at homes for sale right now, and this obviously has been a trend that we're struggling with across the board, um, just because of the fact that inventory is still incredibly low. Right now, if you can see, we haven't really gained a lot. In December, we were at 1,505. Now in January, obviously it's not updating into February yet, but in January, we were looking at just under 1,500. So that's not giving us a lot of new homes for sale, which is one of the big reasons why we are continuing to see a buyer's market. However, the average sales price you can see has come down a little bit. So in December, we were at 420,000, and now in January, we're at 410,000. So a difference of about $10,000. However, I can tell you that I have a client who has a townhome. We've been kind of watching the numbers play out in his townhome community over in Buford, and the numbers have really been all over the place, going from 2021, 2022. Then going into 2023, they kind of reduced, and now those numbers have come back up. So I don't want to sit here and say that this reduction, seeing a $10,000 reduction, is an enormous reduction in something that we're seeing across the board, because we're not. We are still seeing multiple offers in some scenarios, but not all. If your home is one that is move-in ready, it's been taken care of, and is in a desirable area such as Buford, Suwanee, Alpharetta, Duluth, any of those locations where homes are highly sought after, then you are still likely to see a multiple offer situation. If your home is one that's going to be needing work, maybe the roof is original and the house was built 20 years ago, the AC needs to be replaced. These are times when you're going to see probably some negotiations, or we're really needing to price it appropriately so that you're not having to reduce that price. And that is something that is across the board. But taking a look back over here at the median sales price, we've been really kind of staying steady, hovering around that $400,000 to $425,000 mark. And realistically, Georgia has seen 1.6% equity increase since the beginning of the year. So if you own a home, that's great news. Yes, it's minimal. However, in my opinion, any increase is a great increase. A lot of people last year, as we've talked about before, were really anticipating having a housing, I don't want to say like a fallout, but a lot of people were predicting that we were going to be seeing a recession last year. And that's something that in the real estate market, we did not really see. It did shift, and we did see markets, in some areas, especially over in Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, they definitely saw some number reductions, some home value reductions. But here in Georgia, we've continued to see an increase just at a more reasonable paced pricing, which is honestly the best thing that we could see. Because if we continue to see things rising at the numbers we were seeing in the last couple of years during the COVID years, we would not be able to sustain that. That's why we're in the market that we're in, where it is almost impossible for a new home buyer to get into the market. So, looking at this though, pending sales have come up, which is great. We're at 744. And I can tell you, I actually dug into the numbers for February, and we did see an increase on that as well. And if you look at days on market, they've actually increased to about 25 days. Again, this is not a bad number. Historically, in a traditional balanced market, 31 days on market here in Georgia is about a balanced market number. So 25 is still having us in a buyer's market world. I'm sorry, a seller's market world where it's below, the typical balance. So I think we're doing really good here in Georgia. We're not rising at an astronomical increase. Typically in Georgia, we are going to be somewhere between 4 to 6%. We've already seen 1.6% so far this year. I think now they have changed their tune, and in Georgia specifically, they're looking at about a 6.1% increase by the end of the year. I've told you guys before, I think that any real estate transactions that we're going to see, the majority of them, you're going to see them by September, because the last part of this year is going to be an interesting one. I think I don't care what side of the coin you're on, whichever party you love, it is going to be an interesting play out. And I think the last quarter of this year, we are going to see some transactions. However, I don't believe we're going to see a ton of them. So we will be watching closely by third quarter, because I think that's when we're going to see the majority of our real estate transactions take place. So let's say hello to some of our friends. Lone One, I love that you're on. You're one of my favorites. Hello from Jersey. Hey, Carl. Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Anthony, my man, do you think these numbers will go up when the spring season starts, or will it stay steady as long as rates hover around 7%? I think that we're going to see some things increase, and here's why. I think that as we're staying pretty steady around 7%, sometimes we're fluctuating, back down under 7 and then going back to 7. It really just depends on the day. However, I think that a lot of people, and when I say people, I'm talking about sellers specifically, are kind of getting to the point where they're realizing they can still sell their home for a really decent price and make a profit. They're also realizing that these interest rates are going to kind of be holding steady between 6 to 7%. I know we keep hearing that they're going to come down into the fives. I'm holding steady to my belief that we will not see that until second or third quarter. We're almost in second quarter already in just about a month's time frame. I do not believe that we will see 5% or anywhere in the fives before second or third quarter. I would love for somebody to prove me wrong, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I think that a lot of sellers in the spring market are going to come out and start putting their homes on the market. A lot of people have, been reaching out to me and having conversations. They're not really ready to list their home yet, but they're having conversations about it because they've been ready to sell their home for a couple of years. Either they've outgrown their home and they're ready to make a move, or they're just tired of where they are, maybe a job relocation, and they've wanted to sell for a while, but they just haven't wanted to pull the trigger because of the interest rates and because of the market. And now they're just kind of like, okay, I feel safe where we are with the interest rates. They're not going all over the place like they have the past couple of years. And so they're going to put their homes on the market. That is going to help tremendously with inventory. And I think we're going to just really see a good spring market this year, a more positive vibe spring market, where last year it was kind of like, are we going to see a recession? Are we not? We were definitely watching pricing very closely last year, but last year was kind of all over the board with interest rates, as literally multiple times a day they would change. If you locked into an interest rate today, tomorrow it could be substantially higher, or tomorrow it could have reduced substantially, and you're regretting that you locked in the day before. So, thankfully, right now, interest rates are kind of hovering around that 6.8 to 7%, and they just keep kind of moving a little bit within that, but you can get a better feel for where you're going to be. In the last year, we've really only been able to see a lot of new construction taking off because there weren't a lot of resale opportunities. So if we see some more resale opportunities, I think that's really going to help with the spring market. I hope that answered your question. How much would the prices drop if more homes were built? That's a great question. I honestly don't think that we would see the prices drop a lot. I think we might see a pause in them rising substantially, but homes have been continuously being constructed here in Georgia. There's not really been a slowdown other than in 2020 when we first had the shutdown. Ever since then, new construction has been continuing, and it's really been the strongest market over the last 12 months here in Georgia because it was one that was continuously being provided for homebuyers. We haven't really seen homebuyers stop buying. We did see a little bit of a pullback last year as interest rates continued to go up, but we didn't see them stop. And because there was not a lot of resale on the market, most of what was being sold was new construction. So I think we will just continue to see that happening. What we're seeing here in Georgia is new areas being developed. So the suburbs right outside of the city have almost been maxed out. I know in Swanee specifically, I had a client call the other day wanting new construction, and unfortunately, there's just not really any options left in Swanee as far as new construction goes because there's not land opportunities any longer in the Swanee area. Alpharetta, you'll see some new opportunities coming. You're seeing a lot of new construction opportunities. Toll Brothers, which is a builder, fantastic builder here in Georgia, you will see them everywhere. They have multiple communities in the coming Georgia area. However, there are a lot of opportunities that are outside of the suburbs. Areas that we would have called rural areas previously are being developed. One of the ones that I actually saw the other day is Holly Springs. This is an area that is much further out. If you go towards Woodstock, Canton, Ball Ground, that direction, you've got Holly Springs, and they are building a brand new area over there that's going to be like some of the micro cities we've seen. It's going to have shopping, condos, single family homes, townhomes, apartments. So it's really going to be a great new development. And I think a lot of people, the reason that they're kind of concerned with moving further out, or, to the sticks, as I hear a lot of people call it, is because there's not a lot of shopping. There's not a lot of opportunity. If you need to go to the grocery store or Target, things that a lot of us are very spoiled to have on a regular daily basis, you don't find that further out. So builders have learned, if when I build a neighborhood further out, if I will also bring the other players to the game that are building the community, right? They're building the micro city, they're bringing the restaurants, they're bringing the shopping, the Target, the Publix, the Kroger, things like that. Then the area is much more sustainable and will see growth quite a bit faster than if they just went into more rural areas and built a neighborhood. When you're partnering with people, other builders, commercial builders, then some of these establishments, some of these neighborhoods that we're seeing built are really starting to take off because you have, some of the more modern conveniences right there being built with it. What goes around comes around. I have is new construction really worth it, like build quality compared to older homes? That's a great question. And I hear this asked a lot. To be honest with you, it's going to depend on the builder, right? So there are specific builders, like I mentioned, Toll Brothers. they've got great quality homes. They've got homes that are going to be everywhere from $600,000 to well over $1 million. When you're getting into the $1 million, you're obviously getting a much larger home. A lot of times you're getting a bigger lot, but their $600,000 home is built just as well in quality as their $1 million homes. It's just a larger square footage and larger footprint of a lot than a little bit smaller. Now, there are going to be builders that I don't really care for. One of the big things for me is their warranties. The reason, one of the benefits of having a new construction property is the warranty that comes with it. My personal home, I can tell you, here in Swanee was built in 1988. That is an old house. However, my home has been holding up with the best of them. I had to replace the roof because it was 30 years old. I've renovated my kitchen, I've renovated my bathrooms, but these are all things that are aesthetically pleasing. These are not things that had to happen. I can tell you that when I ripped out my kitchen just last year, mind you, after 1988 to 2023, my kitchen cabinets were solid oak and they were fantastic. Other than just looking old, there was nothing wrong with those cabinets. So it is a thing where older homes a lot of times had better quality, especially not necessarily the build of the structure of the home, but the quality of things inside, like the cabinetry, the flooring. Used to, you would see solid hardwood floors in homes. Now, what we're seeing, even in multi-million dollar properties, is we're seeing some of the luxury vinyl go down. Now, I can't necessarily complain about it because I really have seen how well it holds up. I've got 2 kids, 2 dogs, and a cat. So, you know, I kind of like the luxury vinyl. However, it doesn't give that same luxury feel as a hardwood floor. Those are things. The warranty for me is one of the biggest things I'm going to be looking at when I'm looking at a new construction builder, because I want to know that after I've bought your home and it hasn't been lived in, there's going to be nail pops that happen. There's going to be settling that happens throughout the home as that first and second year happen. And if something goes on, are you going to honor your warranty and come back at that almost 1 year mark and take care of all of the things that need to be taken care of? And there's specific builders in the Georgia area, and honestly national, that if you Google them, DR Horton, they don't really have the best reviews. And there's a reason behind that. And when you walk into some of these builders, you see the lack of quality in the build. You can see the lack of quality right there. And I think I talked about this in the last video that I did regarding new construction. One of my pet peeves when it comes to new construction, especially in the model home, is when you're looking at new construction and you walk into a neighborhood and you go into the model home, and first you're turning into the neighborhood, and right there at the sign it says homes starting from, and let's just say that it says starting from $500,000. Well, you already know that there's not one home in there for $500,000. That starting from means realistically you might find a base home in here for about $550,000. That irritates me off the get-go, because if you were really at a $500,000 budget, they should just let you know ahead of time, don't bother coming in here, we don't have anything for you. But they don't. And so that's misleading to me. And then when you walk into the model home, most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, builders have loaded up that model home with every single feature that you could possibly add so that that model home looks absolutely fantastic. Well, that's great, but I really was on a budget and I wanted to keep my budget low. And now you've sold me on this amazing kitchen that for an additional $40,000 I can have. Why not just keep the basics in the model home? So a lot of times when I'm taking clients out to look at new construction, we'll go into the model home, because what are model homes great for, you guys? I'm going to tell you a little secret what model homes are great for. After you bought the house and you're wanting some design ideas, some dining room furniture, or what to do in this space, go back to the model home. See how they laid out the furniture. See the kind of towels they bought. See what kind of furniture they got. Go for those types of things. But when purchasing, I always like to go in and I ask for what's going to be like, are there homes that are being constructed that I can look at? Even if they're under contract, can I just walk through them to see some of the baseline homes and the baseline features to know if I don't add $1 to this home, what is it really going to look like? Am I going to like your standard features? I know that I totally went overboard on that, but that's one of the ones that I feel like is a big, you know, thing, because older homes, they stood the test of times, like you said, but the newer homes have a lot of great features to them. The older homes, something that I don't like about my personal home, I'll be honest, it doesn't have all of the bells and whistles that a lot of the homes these days have, when it comes to technology. Yes, I can add them, but it's much harder to add now at this phase because my home is already constructed. If you're adding them on the front end, where when you're first, you know, building the home, you can add in all of these things. It's really, great to have. So Betty Ayers, they just don't build them like they used to, just like you. Well, Betty, we love that. Look, you guys, just so much fun. So I did want to share an article with you guys, which I thought was very interesting. So the $2 trillion surge in US home values. So this talks about a new Redfin report on the value of the US housing market, and it shows a $2 trillion annual gain. That is substantial. So the housing shortage has had plenty to do with that, but some metros, most notably affordable East Coast and Midwest markets, are seeing home values rise by wider margins. So obviously East Coast, that's us here in Georgia, and it is a fantastic thing to see. However, it's still kind of tough because this is what is making it unaffordable for so many people that are trying to get into the market. So if you see here how we have risen over time, this is from January of 2000 to December 2023. That is a huge surge. So obviously year over year growth, we see here that in 2008 we had that dip and it went down about 10%. But overall, a 10% increase when we have gained that back plus another 10%. So if you held on to your property through the downturn, if you were not one of the ones, and this is why I talk about this all the time, not stretching yourself too far. When you are looking at buying a home, you want to make sure that it's one that you can afford, not only now, but down the road. So if you were one that could afford to keep your home during the downturn 2008 to 2012, where we were seeing a lot of people that had stretched themselves too far losing their home, if you were able to keep your home during that time, not only have you gained that 10% that you lost during that time back, but you've gained another, gosh, another 10 to 15%. So you have not only made your money back, but you've gained another 10 to 15% equity. That, my friends, is huge. So if we look at this article a little bit deeper, the US housing market has grown in value by $2.4 trillion over the past year, raising its total value to $47.5 trillion. I cannot even imagine those figures. The figures are based on an analysis of the Redfin estimate for over 90 million residential properties. So the housing shortage, many homeowners hesitate to put their homes on the market because they're currently locked into significantly lower mortgage rates. This is one of the things that we've talked about, and hopefully this spring and this year we'll start to see a little bit of that relax. Home values hit a low close to a year ago. At the end of 2022, the total value of the US housing market neared a trough, which is partly why year over year growth at the end of 23 was more significant. And number three, home builders kept building. That was one of the things that we just talked about. We haven't seen a slowdown, where in 2008, we had seen home builders overbuild. 2005 to 2007, home builders were building so much that they had a lot of standing inventory. You could basically walk into a new construction community and you could tell them, hey, I want to have a home built, Or you could go look at what they called spec homes. These were homes I know because at the time I worked in the builder industry. I was the one that was in the design studio building these spec houses. I was choosing what is popular right now. Let's go ahead and build out this house so that it's pretty much done. And when you come in are like, hey, I need to have a home within the next 30 days. I don't have time to build out a house. Great. I've got three of them to choose from that can close in 30 days or less. You just tell me the closing date you need. Now you're not seeing that. You are not seeing builders building spec homes. So I will say that while builders, I think there is still a lot to learn on their end, they did learn from the 2008 crash and they are not overbuilding to where they just have a lot of standing inventory. Right now, I can tell you that in a lot of the neighborhoods that I've been as far as new construction, they have wait lists. So if you're thinking about buying new construction, it's something that you want to look at before you're actually ready to make a move because you want to talk to a lender. And a lot of times you want to talk to their lender as well as our own lender. And I've got partner lenders that I can recommend, but I always suggest looking at both because a lot of times with builders, they are offering incentives that just can't be beat. But sometimes you're paying for that on the back end. So I always say look at both and see really and truly who is giving you the best deal. But beyond that, you're not seeing builders building spec homes. They did learn their lesson a little bit, but they've continued to build and they've continued to sell these properties. So you can definitely see where those numbers came from. My thing that I really want to talk to you and shifting gears is something that's so important to me right now because of some things that I've had in my personal life this year, as well as some things that I've had with clients go on. And this is a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about if something were to happen to me or if I were to be in an accident and I could no longer care for myself or care for my property. And the scary thing is, no one is promised tomorrow. And we realistically need to have these conversations today because I don't know what someone else is thinking, what they would want done with their property should they be in that situation, or unfortunately, if they were to pass on. And these are things that really need to be talked about beforehand because the worst case scenario is when something does happen to you and now your loved ones are trying to scramble. They should be focused on you and what's going on with you and not having to be scrambling, figuring out what to do with your property, how to pay for your mortgage if you have one, and so on. So, one of the things that has happened this year is unfortunately within my family, we did have someone that had a scary thing happen. They ended up in the hospital for 6 weeks. And this was brought to light that they didn't have all of this prepared, and we've had to have major family conversations when we should have been focused on our loved ones care. And so I ended up calling and talking with my estate attorney. I actually ended up, if you're here local, some of you attended the estate seminar that I held where I had my estate attorney come out and actually talk to us about all of this because it's just something that is really, really important. And so just something you should focus on before you're having to do so. So, I want to talk to you about the benefits of having your home in a trust. And I know one of the things that has always been said to me is, well, I'm not rich. So, I don't have a ton of money and I don't necessarily need to have my home or any of my assets in a trust. I'm here to tell you that's a complete lie. And I don't care if you have a dollar or a million, you should definitely look at the benefits of having your home or other assets in a trust. Now, let me be clear. I am not an estate attorney. I'm not pretending to be an estate attorney, and I'm not going to give you any other advice on wills, trusts, any of that other than when it comes to real estate. However, if you don't have a will in place or any of that stuff, I highly recommend talking to an estate attorney because it is much more affordable to spend $300 setting up a trust or a will on this side of things when you're healthy then when something happens to you and now your family is having to spend 3,000 or more just to hire an attorney to go to probate court. So, that being said, my little waiver here, I want to talk to you about the benefits and the different types of trust and why possibly you might want to look into putting your home into a trust. First of all, there's two different kinds of trust. What we're going to look at right now is the revocable living trust. So basically, this is a trust that a person can create while they are still alive. It's called a revocable trust because the person who creates it can change the terms at any time. So let's say that right now my kids are still fairly young, they're 14 and 12. I would might possibly my husband and I put our home into a revocable trust. Then I'm going to have, if something happens to us, my home going to perhaps my mom. Well, then as the children get older, perhaps I'm going to go in and I'm going to change that and I'm going to have the home going to my son or my daughter. These are things that you can change throughout as your life changes. So, what are some of the reasons that you would really even want that? Well, mortgage and property tax exemption, while transferring a house into a trust does change its ownership and title, it should not affect the trustee's mortgage or their property tax exemption. As long as the property is residential and basically you're not renting it out, you're still going to be able to have the property tax exemption on that. One of the benefits is selling the house. So if you have a home to sell, and let's say that you're alive and well, you can absolutely sell that property, no problem. But what happens if you are in a car accident and you might not be coming home from the hospital, or you're coming home from the hospital, but you're going to need a lot of care. And so you're going to be living with someone else, and your family sees we're going to need to sell this property either because you're not going to be coming back to it or because maybe you need the finances from that property in order to take care of yourself. Well, now you're incapacitated and the family is going to have to go to court again, going back to hiring an attorney. If you guys know anything about an attorney, they're not cheap. So if the property was in a trust and I had, let's say it was me, and I had already named a successor in that trust where if I'm incapacitated, this person can immediately take care of my assets that are in this trust. They could go ahead and do whatever needs to be done with my property because I've already named them as a successor within my trust. So they're not having to go find an estate attorney and go to court and fight for the right to be able to take care of what needs to be taken care of. Again, I would want them to be focused on me, not having to figure out all of this. Another thing, one of the most common reasons why people put their home into a trust is the ease of transition, like we just talked about. If the original trustee can no longer manage the trust, the successor will have the same rights and authority as the original trustee and can manage the property or use the assets to help maintain the original trustee's general health and welfare. That is so incredibly important. So, the next thing is to really look at what is the difference between the two different types of trusts. One is called a revocable trust, and one is called an irrevocable trust. A revocable trust means I, Ashley, can make changes to this trust basically as I go. So if I want to change who the successor is, or I want to change what is in the trust, I am able to do so. If, let's say, down the road I want to add something or I want to take something out, I'm able to do so with very minimal issues. I'd basically just call my estate attorney and let him know what's going on, and he can make those changes for me. Now, an irrevocable trust has additional benefits. However, it is something that is much harder to change. It's basically, I loved how my estate attorney explained it. He said, basically, if you could think about a box in an irrevocable trust, I'm closing that box, I'm locking it up, and I'm throwing away the key. Now, if I want to change anything, I've got to go dig and I've got to go find that key to come open the box, unlock it, and unpack what's in it. Where a revocable trust, I've got a box and I'm putting all my stuff in there, but the box is still kind of open. If I want to dig through the box or I want to look at what's in the box, I can do so really at any time with minimal effort. So before we dive into that, I want to see if we have any questions. Make sure that This makes me sad. I know a lot of people it does, but it's one of the things that is most important because you want to go ahead and make your own decisions instead of waiting until something happens and you can't make those decisions for yourself. Hi from Kansas. Hi, Lindsay. Thanks for tuning in. Um, you're way out yonder. Kansas is great. I have some friends that live out there, and they said that it is absolutely gorgeous. I've never been. My husband has, and he said it was absolutely gorgeous. So, Lindsay, thanks for tuning in. As I'm going through this, you guys, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. Like I said, I want to make sure that I'm answering everything that I can. I'm not an estate attorney. If you need one, I have a great one that I can recommend to you. But this stuff was just so beneficial for me. And the thing of the matter is, the sooner you do it, the sooner you are protecting not only yourself, but your loved ones as well. Because the last thing that kids want to do is have to figure things out for their parents or for their spouse or what's going on when something has happened. So if all of this is just in place and all someone has to do is call the estate attorney and say, "Hey, I need you to help me with this and guide me," but everything's already in place. That's really what you want to do. So let's take a look at the different types of trust and really why you would want to use one versus the other. So you've got the living trust here. And a living trust, sometimes referred to as whatever that word is a trust established during someone's lifetime. So this is something where it's, like I said, the revocable trust, the living trust, those are ones that can be modified or they can be changed. An irrevocable trust is, by contrast, it's a trust that cannot be modified or revoked. Not with ease, anyways. Once the grantor places property into an irrevocable living trust, they cannot take the property back or change the terms of the trust. An irrevocable trust can be useful for specific purposes, such as tax reduction or protection. But these types of trusts require careful planning and management. So, why would you want to use one versus the other is a big question that I get. Well, in the case of, let's say, I'm 90 years old and I know that I'm not going to be living forever here. And I know that I want my property to go to specific people or be divided up into specific ways. I'm going to have that property into an irrevocable trust where I've locked it up, I've thrown away the key, and nobody can make changes to that trust. And my attorney, my estate attorney, knows that upon my death, this is how this trust is going to go. There are no questions. We're not having to go to probate and decide things or argue things. I can't tell you how many clients that I've worked with, and it's actually quite sad, where a parent has passed away. There's four siblings. Two of them want to sell it. One of them kind of doesn't care. And then the other one is dead set. We're not selling the property. Well, if that home isn't paid off, or even if it is, property taxes still have to be paid on that property. If it's not paid off, monthly payments are still needing to be paid on that property. Who is paying for those? Because if the parent has passed away, now it's up to the kids to maintain that property, to maintain the monthly payments, to maintain the property taxes, to maintain the home itself with the maintenance that needs to be done. And so if you have a couple of siblings that are ready to move on, but you have one that's not ready to let go, or maybe they're not agreeing on the price that needs to be done, this is where things can get held up and they end up going to probate, because all parties that are named have to be present and sign off when a home is being sold. You can't just have three out of the four siblings. You have to have them. And then let's say that one of the siblings has passed away, but they had a wife that was left. Well, that wife has to now sign off as that other deceased sibling's heir. It's very complicated. Where if you had an irrevocable trust, you're not going through any of the complications that you would in a probate court situation where you're having to have all parties sign off. Another reason perhaps could be that you're in a divorce situation. There are different reasons that you might perhaps go through having an irrevocable trust, but you really do need to talk to um, an estate attorney to look at what is going to be the best option for you. So, do you need to have this? No, but this is a legal tool that obviously is going to be to your advantage. And I know a lot of people have kind of thought about, well, if I don't have a ton of money or I don't have, a great estate, there's no point in doing it. I'm here to tell you that that is completely false information. It can protect you against creditors. The thing that a lot of people don't realize is if you pass away and you had a ton of debt, that debt doesn't go away. That debt's still there. Guess who gets it? Your heirs. Where if you had an irrevocable trust, those many times those people, those that coming for the debt can't touch you. Or let's say that you had $1 million worth of debt, but you left $2 million to your kids. Well, the kids don't get the 2 million. The people that you owe the debt to are going to get their million before your kids. And if you had $2 million worth of debt, guess what? Your kids don't get anything because the debtors get paid first. And then whatever's left, then your heirs will get. However, if you had everything into an irrevocable trust, your heirs get paid first. So, this is just some of the bare minimum benefits that I think it is so incredibly important for you to know. And I think so much of us just push this aside. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about death. We don't want to face what the end might look like. We don't want to think about something happening to us. But you guys, it's inevitable. At some point, something will happen. Even if you're in your 80s or 90s and it's just natural, something will happen. And it is better off to be protected, not only for yourself, but for your family and make sure that all of this stuff is taken care of. So, but if someone buys said home, then it's new owner's problem, right? Correct. That is. Um, so she speaks the truth. Listen, I can't talk. She speaks the truth. Listen up, everyone. I appreciate that, Betty. So if you guys have any questions about this, definitely let me know. If you need guidance to an estate attorney, there are a couple here local to Georgia that I can, definitely put you in touch with. If you want to talk further and deeper into this, again, I definitely would encourage you, as uncomfortable as it is, to make sure that you have these conversations, get things set up to protect yourself and your heirs. I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in today. I hope this was helpful and a resource, and I will see you guys next Thursday. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.